This is On Your Story podcast. On this podcast series, we talk on all sorts of topical issues in the cross-river state landscape in Nigeria, and even global issues as well. We try to analyze by bringing facts on issues that affect everyone in the continent of Africa, in Nigeria, and of course in Cross River State. But today we are going to be Cross River Pacific. We are going to be talking about, it was my own thinking. I don't know if I'm the one that feels that way, because I have seen a lot of political leaders. I've seen a lot of people in the private sector as well, that they do not go beyond a certain threshold. So I began to ask myself, could that be a spiritual issue? Are there certain spiritual connotations that affect cross-riverians? Is there a pattern that every cross-riverian cannot go beyond a certain threshold in the political space, in the private sector? What is actually going on? All right, so we've seen a lot of issues involving Cross River, and we're also very lucky to have a governor who is an apostle, and we have the wife of the bishop. They are prioritizing God in Cross River State with the Solemn Assembly. Today I decided to bring someone who holds a doctorate in divinity, and is also a father of faith. He holds the spiritual oversight over Cross River State. He is His Eminence Archbishop Josef Bassey, live here on the podcast today for us to talk about the spiritual connotation as regards Cross River. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
My own concern has always been the fact that you see cross-riverians at the national level, and then of course when they become minister, the next thing they are returning back to Cross River, or when they become senator, when they are done with their term, they're returning back to Cross River. Is that natural? Is there any limitation? Is there any ceiling that we can't go beyond? What is actually happening in your own opinion as a spiritual father?
Well, maybe let me add to what you've said, and then when I'm done with that, we can begin to solve the problem, or look at how the problem can be solved.
Okay.
If you bring everybody in Cross River State together, bring the who is who in Cross River State together, put them in one place, and you realize that some of them are some of the brightest, intelligent, diligent, anything you can think of. But then you'll then ask yourself a question: how can a people be so gifted, be so strong, have this enormous capacity, but you can't see it, translate to them ascending or rising to those towering heights globally and otherwise? Or you find that some of the people that you even have, who you may think, oh, they are there doing some big stuff, if you put them side by side, some of the men that God has blessed us, privileged us to have, we will dust them. So that gives you concern, right? And now you are asking a question: why is it so?
Is that a pattern?
Why is it so? Is it a pattern? The answer would be yes.
Okay.
It's been pretty much a pattern. So now, if it's been a pattern, then why is it so? I think that the very first thing we need to understand is that as Cross-Riverians, we are not normal. We are not regular people. Okay. God has a peculiar ordination upon Cross-Riverians, upon Cross River State, and that's something that we need to understand. It's like talking about even the land Calabar. The land Calabar is not just any other land. If you understand the spirit realm and see the place that Calabar holds in the in global spiritual permutation, you'll immediately begin to understand why some things are going on. However, the place to start is for us to recognize the call and the ordination of God upon us. So the question will be, who are we? Who are we supposed to be? Because until there is a proper alignment, we'll keep missing it. And we do not only need to have that alignment, we must have the alignment and be able to stay on course. Otherwise, we have a situation whereby, we align, we get some things right, we get off, and then we have this back and forth thing. Every one of us need to know. We need to sit down and look at ourselves and say, look, across the sectors of life, you say, look, when the chips are down, that we are a people of a common destiny.
Okay.
Because how else do you explain that this is consistent? It's been this way for decades, for generations. So there is a common destiny. And I believe that will even help to unite us.
Okay.
And then we go beyond that to realizing and embracing the truth that life is spiritual. I hear some people try to make light of the spirituality of life. Life is 100% spiritual. It's the spiritual that controls the physical. You say, oh, but how about this other country? How about this nation? Let's go there. Bring any country, whether you're going to talk about Korea, talk about China, talk about any nation, the United Kingdom, America. We can walk down that path and show you the spiritual activism, the spiritual activities and things that went on and what they do. Because nothing just happens. Everything is made to happen. There must be that combination, yes, of the spiritual and the physical. You don't just, because you've gotten the permutations right in the spiritual, doesn't mean you go to sleep.
Sure.
You must now do the work and understand the laws and rules that govern things also in the natural, so they can be an alignment. You don't say because we've gotten some things right concerning prosperity in the spiritual, you now violate, the other laws of prosperity that must bring about the manifestations, but there must be that.
All right, so you've established the fact that we're a people of a common destiny, right?
Yes.
So, as a people of common destiny, who are we supposed to be?
Now, that takes it a notch higher.
Okay.
Number one, we are ordained to take the lead, to blaze the trail,
Okay.
to show the way. If there is that is something that is upon us. We are by divine ordination pace setters. We are not of them that should just follow.
Okay.
We are them that should create, invent, beat the path. But then that doesn't start there. It starts by us leading in the worship of God. When we lose it there, then we miss it in every other sector.
Okay.
Because our strength, our ability to manifest and be who we are supposed to be is going to come from, is a God thing. It's like when God said to the people of Israel, said, you should be the head and not the tail, and this and that and that and that. It wasn't because of their size. It wasn't going to happen because of their skills and all of that. It was going to happen because of God, but that was predicated on them understanding the covenant, obeying the covenant, doing the needful, and then some things will happen. Now let me show you. Let me take you back a little bit. In Cross River State, for anybody who's been around for a while, a time happened even during the military rule, that while some states will have administrators posted to them, and then during the tenure of the administrator, the states will do well, will prosper. It wasn't so in Cross River State. We had administrators come and go, and everyone will leave us worse
Than they met us.
Okay. That was so until, in fact, the only exception was Dan Achibong. When we had Dan Achibong, he did tremendously well, turned around the fortunes of the state, and so on and so forth. You can say, well, because he was a son of the soil and was in alignment with some things. But then, every other person, whether you're talking about Abuneni, the Kefas, in Prince Will, and so on, and we're crying, we're praying, we're making petitions, and all of that. And finally, we now had a Kizito attack. How did the Kizito attack come? Because the people, stood up, wailed, cried, agonized, and all of these things about fasting, prayer. Then we had, God's servant who's gone to be with the Lord, a burden bearer for the state as well. The late Archbishop Achibong had the United Army of the Lord, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, we had a flicker of light, right? And then we went on. So we've noticed that every time we get online and carry out serious spiritual engagement, we tend to have some opening, and when it comes, it works for everybody, almost everybody, everybody. But that's why I started by saying we need to know what the assignment is, what our destiny is. We need to know how to align, and then we can follow through the process.
All right, so if you're just joining us, this is On Your Story podcast. I have the privilege of hosting my own father, His Eminence, the Archbishop of Calabar, Archbishop Josef Bassey, live here in the studios with us on this series today. I want us to take a look at I would like to make specific reference to the political class, right?
Yes.
We've seen a lot of people go up and come down. At the point, we had more than 6 key players at the national. I keep asking people this question: who talks Cross River at the national? Do we have gatekeepers? Why are we not having gatekeepers? But we have very prominent Cross Riverians living in Abuja. But why are they not playing the politics of Cross River, in Abuja? And then I want to ask this question: will I be correct to say that there's a siege? And if there's a siege, how do we break it?
Yeah, it's actually a painful thing, Beatrice. It's really painful. It's painful and disheartening because we're not just looking at what happened in the past. We're not just looking at what is happening around, but we're looking at the fact that if something is not done, the future of our children and our children's children is determined. This is why some of us do what we do. Because if we don't understand, now, you see, Christianity is beyond church. It's not about the playing church thing or pitching denominations against each other. That's petty. And that's not even Christianity to start with. When you come to understand what it really is, it is about personifying or being the solution. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. The world is in darkness. I am the solution. And then he turned to the disciples and said, ye are the light of the world. Meaning that when we understand what what Christianity is about, we will need to take on responsibility of being the deliverers, of being the messiahs. When you come to that place and you carry that weight of responsibility upon your shoulder, the pettiness of beginning to play denominationalism and beginning to get into all manner of things which distract us will be done away with, because we have a big issue. So talking about what is happening around us, I said it's painful. I said it's disheartening. And the reason why it lingers is that this is not something that has to do with individuals.
Okay.
If it were individualistic, then you can say, well, that's not my business. But you see, that's the way some people feel. When things are going well with you, you think that the shine is on you for a season or a moment. You think that, well, that's their business. That's not my business. Until you get to that point where it catches up with you, where it hits you. And even at that, you may not realize what has happened to you. You could still think that is individualistic. When you read the Bible, you'll notice that there were 12 tribes of Israel. And the 12 tribes, each tribe had its prophetic destiny, its prophetic mandate. There's an ordination. If you are a Levite, this is your lot. If you are of the tribe of Judah, this is your lot. If you are of the tribe of Benjamin, this is your lot. That is called ordination. This is what you are ordained to be. This is what is going to happen by way of you being of a particular tribe. So you realize that whether you know it or not, the tribe you come from, your state of origin, actually from the spiritual perspective, can determine your possibilities and impossibilities.
Wow.
Yes, it can, and it does. It can determine your limitations and your breakthroughs. So this then is the reason why when something is corporate, it requires a corporate approach. There must be the synergy. We must be able to say, no, this thing, we need to deal with it. There must be an agreement. Because if you stand alone and say you want to deal with something that has to do with everybody, if they are not in sync, if they are not in agreement, sometimes you could be at it and they say, no, I'm not a part of that. So, I don't agree. I object.
We can categorically at this point say that there's a siege.
Yeah,
what do we call it?
Yeah, there is. I would rather put it this way. There is
a pattern.
There is a pattern.
Okay.
There is a wilderness.
Okay.
Experience that the people
are going through.
Mm-hmm. There are some ceilings, that need to be shattered. Because it's like when you get there, then the only way is to
you stay there, or
either
you
stay there or you go down. But the energy, around will be such that you can go beyond that.
Okay, so I don't know. From this,
but it's going to change. It's changing.
I can say
yes, it's going to change.
But my own question now is: did we do anything in particular as a state to warrant us to experience this? Is it natural? Is it something our forefathers did? Why is Cross River not getting what Cross River deserves?
All right. I don't think it's just about what our forefathers did, because that will seem as if there is some curse somewhere that cannot be broken in a million years. There's no such thing. You see, in the realms of the spirit, you only need to when there is a problem, when there is a challenge, what you need is light. Being able to know what exactly, because there's a solution to every problem. There's a formula to solving every equation. Now, what is it that we're getting wrong? I'll tell you what it is. Number one, God expects so much of us as a state. There is a demand, is a state that God has laid claim on. It is.
What is the specific demand?
Now, the specific demand, number one, is that we lead the way. And I'm going to say this to every Crossriver listening to me. If you're a believer, you're a child of God, you want to serve God, you need to know this. Anybody else can play games with God and do all of that and just, get around the corner. You're not called to do that. As a Crossriver, you're either into God absolutely or you're a joker. But if you're not in absolutely and getting on course with Him, you will never be able to fully become all you should become and actualize all you need to actualize. But you see, it's not just about an individual now. Like I said, it's a corporate thing. It's something we need to wake up to and know that who we have, who we are meant to have, who we should have as Cross River State is God. Fundamentally. And any attempt to trust in anything else outside of that, whether it be man or connection or whatever, will fail us again and again and again and again until we get that foundation right.
Okay. All right. So I've heard a few permutations that states that Crossivarians are docile, because when you want to look at the private sector, how many key players in the private sector's aggressive variants. Which experts, any sphere of influence, majority as stranger elements. Now, Cross River also went from having 2 federal ministers to having a minister of state. I see that as demotion. But in all of that demotion and all of that happened, nobody rose up. There was no single voice, no protest, nobody said a word. Are we comfortable in demotion? Are we comfortable in failure? Why are we not speaking up? Could it be that perseverance are truly docile?
Well, there is a voodoo, a voodoo play that found its way into our politics in the last 10 years. Okay. Specifically during the reign of Muhammadu Buhari, okay. And it also happened in Cross River State. Now, so we now had a situation where Cross River State, if anything else, in terms of speaking, I'm going to talk about the other areas of docility subsequently. But in terms of being able to speak up, Cross River State, you can say anything about it. You can refer to her as a state where the people would not speak. If anything else, we're referred to as a state that's perpetually at war with itself, always talking, doing this, doing that. But something happened. A siege was intentionally and deliberately enforced over the state. Now, I speak authoritatively as a privileged spiritual leader, one whose eyes are at least open to some degree in the realms of the spirit. Now, a siege was enforced upon this state, and that siege was such that from top to bottom, it doesn't matter what was going to happen in the state, that no one was to raise his voice or say anything or do anything. That siege was on. But like I said, it wasn't just local. It also happened at the national level. Okay. It was so. It was enforced. It held the people bound, held them captive. Nobody had a voice. Nobody said anything. Nobody could do anything. And that went on for years. It was sudden. From the beginning, it wasn't so. It was a bewitchment which was serviced again and again, so that the state could be raped, robbed, destroyed. Anything could happen without any fight, without any reaction. And that went on, unfortunately, for a period of time. But thankfully, that has been broken. Because today, suddenly we have people who didn't have voice. Suddenly everybody has a voice under this administration. Everybody's talking, everybody's saying something. Just go back a few months back, it wasn't so. But now everybody is saying everything and anything and so on. So in terms of being able to speak, I think that has been broken. However, the other part of docility, do you know that in the realms of the spirit, do you know you can come under a bewitchment that will turn you into what you are not? Do you know that a snake gets bewitched? A serpent, big, gets bewitched and becomes a toy that is used to play. The Bible says without enchantment, the serpent will bite. So it means with enchantment, a serpent can become a toy. And we see that sometimes in the market. A big cobra and somebody's playing with. No, something is wrong. That is not the cobra. That cobra has been messed up. So the same thing happens when the spiritual influence over a life, over a land, over a people, is not what it should be. The people can manifest things different from who they really should be. You can find them act in certain ways, Now, that is not also to excuse, I'm a stickler for balance, That's not also to excuse people who are outrightly lazy. Outrightly lazy, unwilling to strive, unwilling to be diligent, unwilling to improve themselves, unwilling to fight for what they want. But I speak more on the side of those well-meaning cross-variants who are committed to succeeding, who are giving it all it takes. They desire, they want to, but for whatever reason that they can't explain, they just realize that their best effort is not taking them anywhere. Okay. Their great dreams, they get to their old age and realize they didn't leave the ground. It's like a plane that never left the airport, and they wonder and they can't understand what is happening, So this for me means we need to do a lot more than we are doing. And part of what I think we need to do is that, number one, if we understand first and foremost that, look, we're people of a common destiny, and that our future, our greatness, and everything is tied to our aligning to what God demands of us. That we are people called to lead the way, even in the worship of God. Do you know that the Obong of Calabar, for instance, is in the committee, is the only person in the committee of Christian kings, right? And that as far back as 18 something. Now I'm going somewhere. I'm just trying to say these are no coincidences. These are no coincidences. It's not a coincidence that Christianity in Nigeria actually began here in Calabar. Okay. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that maybe the Obong is called is the defender of the Christian faith. It's not a coincidence, but we need to know what is the demand. What was God looking for? Christianity may be messed up in the world, in the nation as it is today. But there are people that need to put it right. And we must rise from here and say, look, this is not how it was supposed to be. And begin to correct some of those anomalies.
Okay, so how do these anomalies you're talking about, how do we correct them? I'm very, very interested, because it's seemingly looking at safe, whatever goes up comes down in Cross River State. All right, so I would want to say that, I don't know, let me ask, could that be what affected someone like Dr. Betta Edu, who was shining, a bright star shining, all of a sudden conspiracy, and then fizzles out? And as usual, I don't think we fought for her enough. So why is it that everything that goes up comes down? Justice Onagen, the former head of service of the Federation, I can go on, Barrister Korobana Blah. There are so many of them that shone so bright, and then they came down.
It's been a pattern.
How do we break that pattern?
It's been a pattern. Now, first, we have to recognize we're people of a common destiny. When you do that, now, you will come to a place where, whether it's Onogen or Obla or Betta or anybody for that matter, it is not them, it is you. That oneness, we must become intentional and aggressive and violent about the subject of unity. Yes, we must. We must.
So whatever forces interplaying right now, they are dividing and ruling.
If we are not united, we won't win.
All right.
We must unite. We must understand this is an us thing. It doesn't matter who is involved. It's not when it happens to think, oh, it's them. Okay, and I know sadly some people will even be happy. Something goes wrong, affects one, and they say, hey, it's good for him or good for No. No.
All right, so there's something I want you to address, yes. Your eminence. They said sometimes when you get stabbed, it's not the pain from the stab that matters. It's when you turn back and say who's holding the knife. We see a lot of petitions being written against Crossivarians by Crossivarians. That for me is witchcraft. How do you address this pull him down syndrome? He's playing out in the Church of Jesus Christ. He's playing out in the political space. He's playing out in the private sector. Okay. How do we correct that?
Now, many of the people who are in church, like you say, it's playing up in church and all of that. Many of the people who are in church and many of those who are Christians know nothing about Christianity. Absolutely nothing. They may be pastors, they may be bishops, they know absolutely nothing about Christianity. And I say that without any fear. And I'm going to tell you what it is. Because, you see, the concept of Christianity that a lot of us think about and deal with is as it has to do with the multitude. In Christianity, when you look at the ministry of Jesus Christ, there were two things involved. He had the disciples and he had the multitudes. The teaching for the multitudes is very different from that of the disciples. The multitudes gather because they want their needs met. They want to eat the bread and the loaf and all of that, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to the disciples gather because they want to attain Christhood, to become who Christ is, what Christ is. That's why they'll say, we've been with you so long, show us the Father. We want to see the Father. They're not looking for bread. They're not looking for loaves. They're not looking for healing. They're not looking for deliverances. That is what, as disciples, as Christians, as believers, we offer to our world. But when we come to the business of Christianity itself, it's about a man coming to a place where he consciously decides that, look, I realize that I'm not just man. I wasn't created to be a mortal being. I ought to be more than this. And so you now want to attain that ultimate for which you were created to be. And what were you created to be? To be in the image and likeness of God. And that becomes your pursuit. And so Christianity becomes Christ becomes your model, and so you get initiated into Christ and you want to get at that. Now, why am I saying this? Because when you come to this place, you will know that the fundamental of Christianity is oneness with God. You can't come to where you are one with God and you can be talking about some of these things, and then oneness with one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. Not by the titles, not by the signboards. If you have love. So if the love is not there, then we are not. But if we come to where we know who we are as Cross-Riverians, and that even these things I'm saying now is what we ought to model and teach the world, that where they miss it, we need to bring them back to the path of truth and say, hey, this thing going on now, have you noticed now the average Cross-Riverian, there's something about the Cross-Riverian which I think that we need to recognize, and is the fact that other people may be trying to teach us greed, teach us covetousness, teach us stealing, teach us how to justify anomalies. But from the beginning, for a proper Cross-Riverian, it is not so. There is something a true Cross-Riverian that is born, that has the Cross River blood should have in him. And that, number one, is contentment. Is a character of God. Is a character of the people of faith. Contentment, being able to be contented in whatever situation, whatever condition, being able to be contented. But we're dealing with a society that values count for nothing. All that matters to people is fame, name, wealth, possession. And unfortunately, even those who should know better and show the way are not doing that. So it tends to be a norm that you want to look at somebody and value the person based on, hey, how much does he have? How popular are you? And so on. Cross River State is an enlightened state. We are an enlightened people. We are supposed to lead the way, show the way. And for us to lead the way and show the way, we must get it right in our covenant walk with God. We must understand oneness. The principle of oneness, that you touch one Cross-Riverian, you touch all Cross-Riverians. That one affects one, affects all. And when we come, if we can achieve that, and if we can synergize, there is nothing. When I say nothing, I mean there is nothing we won't be able to achieve. It's not another curse that must be broken. It's about the hatred. It's about the divisions, the looking at the other person as being a stranger to you. That's something we need to deal with.
Professor Emmanuel Ayandele, which so many years ago as a pioneer Vice Chancellor of University of Calabar, I don't know what he passed through. I don't know his experience. I don't even know what he encountered that he made that statement that has become like a benchmark that Cross River State is an atomistic society that is perpetually at war with itself. Now, looking at the political landscape, we started 2025 with a lot of dramatic happenings. We've seen a lot of people struggle to do character assassination, smear campaigns, conspiracy theories here and there, ahead of a 2027 that is so many years from now. Nobody knows who's going to be alive by then. Nobody knows what is going to play out. But then we have intrigues, people are making enemies, and then, of course, the supporters are inheriting enemies. Is that healthy for Cross River as a state?
Totally unnecessary. Totally unnecessary. I've spoken on some other platforms and I've said it's totally unnecessary. Now, Cross River State needs to grow. We must be able to have what I call the Cross River dream. That every Cross Riverian, even the child, when you come to planet Earth, you should be able to know, hey, you are a Cross Riverian. This is the dream. This is where we are going. You see, like America, you see the American dream. All right. So when presidents come into office or leave office, or you're a governor of a state, or you're representing a district and all of that, it's all about the American dream. It's all about the American dream. We should be focusing on the Cross River dream. If the world is growing at such a speed, all facets of life, we cannot begin a year and we are getting into bickerings, getting enmeshed in conspiracy theories and all of it. It is unnecessary. You can't even be doing 2027 now, because once politics starts, every other thing goes out of the window, and so it's the state that will suffer. So that for me is unnecessary, and goes back to what I said. We must learn and cultivate the art of uniting. We must, mortals, the natural man is driven by ego. So conflicts come largely from ego, personal dreams, ambitions, and all of that. But to be able to go beyond that, then we must rise, above that level of life, where you begin to see the bigger picture, the good of all. So sometimes you realize that, walking in the messianic path, the good of all may mean you dying. So you rather die so that others can live, so that others can be happy. Unity might mean us letting go some things, sacrificing things, dealing with our ego where necessary. Cross River State, the success, the prosperity, the development of Cross River State should be such a big thing for all of us that we are willing to pay the price, take the bullets when necessary for Cross River State to evolve.
All right, so what could be the worst case scenario if Cross Riverians do not realize that we're people of a collective destiny? If they do not take a stand to do what they ought to do, what do you think could be the worst case scenario?
Yeah, well, the trend will continue, and ultimately there will be a total takeover, because nature abhors vacuum. You see, if you are not doing what you should be doing, and you're not taking the places that belong to you, some other people will have to take them. Some other people may have to take, whether you call them stranger elements or whatever. I'll rather not call it stranger elements, because I realize that, look, life is about complementation. Life is about complementation. We all need each other. We all need each other. So if, for instance, you're supposed to provide a service in your land and you're not providing the services, and some other people from maybe some other clime are there to provide that service, you should rather be thankful because you didn't do it. But some other people came in and they were able to fill that gap so that that void no longer existed. They should be appreciated, and all of that, because life is about complementation.
Wow. That is thought-provoking. And I want to say thank you, Your Eminence, for all the wonderful, thought-provoking analysis you've given to us on this podcast series today. I know a lot of perseverance to take this seriously, and I know something specific will be done. But before you go, 1 year down the line in the Senator Prince Bassey led administration, what is your take on the administration before we wrap up?
Well, I'm not a politician. And I always look at things from the side of the spirit. Now, the Prince Bassey II's administration, from where I stand, is he came on the saddle pretty much as a deliverer, someone sent by God at a proper time to get some job done. And I'll tell you, by far, I think that the biggest thing that the Prince Bassey II's administration has done has been aligning to see to it that the spiritual space is sanitized and opened up. That what was like a siege over the spiritual space is broken. So we find people expressing themselves. We find people being able to vent. It's not just physical, but it's something that has come from the spiritual, and that we should appreciate. And with that also comes people now being able to, you can dream dreams and pursue them. And I believe that we are going to see a lot more perseverance, a lot more people succeeding and prospering because of the atmosphere. And then there's something else that he has done, which for me is also very, very instructive. You see, is a mark of desolation, spiritual desolation, which speaks of a curse. When you walk into a place and you see abandoned projects, things that were not done, you see how decay and so on and so forth taking place. But I see that whereas maybe some other, as a politician, I'm thinking so. That as a politician, when you take over office, what you concern yourself about are those things that will be traceable to your name. They'll say you did this, you did so. You began and finished. Yes, you want to do that. So you find we've seen politicians shy. They don't want to continue. They shy away from anything that anybody else did. They don't want to touch it because it doesn't matter what you put in there. It's going to be to this person's credit or that person's credit. And because of that, we have abandoned projects. We have desolation. But I've noticed that the governor came in and he's been busy pretty much repairing, redeeming, trying to finish things that were started, because it doesn't matter who started what. It's Cross River State that we're talking about here, so I see that, and that for me is a lot. It takes a whole lot to repair, and redeem, than it is to just start something and finish, So from where I stand, from the spiritual, I think that we are in for something good so far. A whole lot, can be done, and I believe, as we keep praying and with the right things in place, it should be done. Maybe the only thing is that I think that sometimes that there may be areas that some of his lieutenants are not doing as much as should in giving direct interpretation to what the governor himself personifies. A few exceptions here and there.
I've heard you say in different forums that you have spiritual oversight over Cross River State, and I've seen you do things. I've seen you grind in shadows for perseverance to rise. I've seen you invest your funding in ensuring that people are being sensitized and informed and all of that. I've seen you try to carry out a mindset reorientation in Cross River State. What is your word, your last word, your new year message to the good people of Cross River, Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much, Beatrice. I think that has also gotten me. That's also gotten me into a lot of trouble and gotten me a lot of enemies. But there's nothing that anybody can do about that, And talking about that, I want to say congratulations to you, because
Thank you.
yeah, because what you're talking about is maybe the world do not know that Beatrice was going to Jakba. Remember when she came out of the university and all of that, finished youth service, came to me and said, "Daddy, I want to leave Calabar," and I said, You're not going to
Then
anywhere.
you said something. You said lands don't make men and men make lands. That you can stay anywhere and go global.
Yes.
That was what you said to me.
Yes. And I stand by that. It's happened to me through life. People will always say, "What are you still doing in Calabar? What in the world are you doing there?" No. You should be here. You should have moved to here. You should have done this. They want you in some other country. They want you in Lagos. Want you to be anywhere else because they just think you are wasting. And you see, small men go to made lands. Tough men turn the wilderness into fruitful lands and global cities. Lands don't make men. If you're made by the land, you are not that big. But it is men that make lands. There are no dry lands, we only have dry men. And so my word to everybody will be, believe in Cross River State, believe in this land, regardless. We are the ones to fix it. If it's not working, we are the ones to make it work. So we must own it. We must take the responsibility. We must invest in it. We must put our resources and everything where our mouth is. We must. It may not work immediately, but it will work over time. Because if we all pull our strength together and give it a push, there is no mountain that won't move. There is no wall that won't collapse. There is none. So first, believe in the land. Believe anything can work. Believe there is no height, no limit to how far you can go as a Cross Riverian, regardless of whatever you may find around you. Records are meant to be broken. Ceilings are meant to be shattered. Mountains are meant to be moved. If the generations before could not, or they did not, they gave their all and it didn't happen, who knows? We may just be that generation that must make the shift. So we must keep pushing. We must fight. We must not throw in the towel and throw up our hands and say, well, no, it's not. Every day we wake up and we fight anew, because victory is sure, and greater is he that is in us than he that's in the world.
I say amen to that. Thank you very much, Your Eminence. It's been world class listening to you. And for all Crestivarians out there, this is one podcast series that you must listen to. If you have plans of making any significant progress, if you want to make the difference, if you want to be the difference in your generation, you must listen to this thought-provoking edition of our podcast, talking about the spiritual connotation of Cross River State with His Eminence Archbishop Josef Bassey. It's been something else. I don't know how to classify that specifically, but I always say to Rose, I said, whatsoever you do, wherever you go, always put your best foot forward. Let's support the process. We are the only ones that will move Cross River forward. I've said it time and time again that building a Cross River State of our dream requires a collective involvement. And for us as a people, what we need to do is to support the present dispensation, because the policy direction of any state is determined by the political class. So let's support Governor Bassey 2022 for us to build a Cross River State of our dream. Thank you very much for watching. I'll bring you another thought-provoking edition next week. Bye-bye.